Guys, welcome back to the channel. Now, just very quickly before I play the segment of Deputy Leader of Reform Richard Tice going off, rightly so, in a Sky News interview in relation to Axel Ruda-Cabana, I must say, I covered it in my last video in relation to this, but I must say it again. The public are not happy. You know, Axel Ruda-Cabana has just pled guilty, but the events that led up to this happening was shocking. You know, there was high levels of incompetencies from the woke media. They were spreading misinformation and disinformation, from the Labour government, from the Crown Prosecution Service. You know, everyone seemed to be in a coalition when it came to this case. They seemed to be protecting Axel Ruda-Cabana. They didn't want to give out his name, you know, in the beginning, which led to unease between different communities. You know, different communities were having friction as a result of this. So much was circulating in the air. Nigel Farage was saying we need answers, and Nigel Farage was basically being vilified, and they were saying that he was one of the reasons, he was one of the primary reasons as to the riots that happened last year in 2024 for just demanding answers in relation to this Axel Ruda-Cabana case. And, you know, all parties that have been involved, you know, the woke Labour government, the disastrous Labour government, the CPS Crown Prosecution Service, you know, the woke media for spreading the disinformation, are to blame for this primarily. You know, and what tops it off is these three girls could have been saved. There were so many things that were put in place to monitor this thug, but, you know, he was able to slip through the cracks and carry out such a disgusting crime. You know, I don't even believe that life in jail solves this, honestly speaking. If it's up to me, I will push for, I'll push for that, 110%. You know, we need to send a message out that this is unacceptable. You know, but when you're like this Labour government and you've sent a message of being very covert with this, you know, using language, you know, that's very, you know, they're politically correct with their language and they can't call it out for what it is, then honestly speaking, I believe that they're complicit in this, which they are. So yeah, absolutely disgusting, man. This whole case was disgusting. It all could have been prevented.
Well, Reform MP Richard Tice is with us now. Your party called on the Prime Minister to answer a lot of questions. He's been addressing some of that. What do you make of it?
The Prime Minister is continuing to deliberately mislead the British people to continue suiting his own narrative. And I'm afraid all of this nonsense that he couldn't say anything is simply untrue. And it's not true to say that the nature of terrorism has changed. In 2016, the murder of Joe Cox, Thomas Mayer was immediately declared an act of terrorism by one individual. 2017, the murder of Keith Palmer here in Westminster by Khalid Massoud, immediately declared an act of terror. August 18 car attack outside Westminster, immediately declared an act of terror by one individual. December 18, Murray Mohammed stabbing 3 people in Manchester Airport, an act of terror declared immediately by one individual. What's happened here is that the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, as he admitted this morning, knew within hours what was going on. He will have known about the background of this individual. They've made the deliberate judgment to withhold information from the British people that they could have told the British people, because Axel Ruda-Cabana was not charged until the 1st of August. So we could have been told, we should have been told about the prevent and the failings, and it should have been declared a terror incident within 24 hours. That is why the British people were so angry and are still raging about this.
You say the phrase deliberately mislead. The question then is, from your perspective, if that is the case, and I'm sure Sir Keir would very much disagree with you, why?
Because I'm afraid I think it's to do with political correctness. They were nervous about the background of this individual and the failings of institutions multiple times. Prevent that we'd already been told. After the London Bridge attacks, we'd already been told that Prevent was going to be reorganised and sorted out. We knew of its failings. Didn't happen. We hear that police, he'd been in touch with the police, he'd been in touch with court, youth justice service. Everybody was covering their backsides. They all had something to hide, and therefore it didn't suit them to disclose this information. This is a massive cover-up of massive proportions, and the British people need to understand the truth.
The Prime Minister said earlier that if the trial had collapsed because crucial details have been revealed by he or others whilst the case was being built, that Axel
I'm sorry,
Radicabana could have walked free. That's his argument as to why.
That is misleading waffle and nonsense. The guy hadn't been charged, OK? So we know what the law of the land is, as does the Prime Minister, and I've just listed out a series of previous instances where the British people were told within 24 or 36 hours that it was a terror incident, often being told the background of the individual before they were charged. So I'm sorry, Prime Minister, but you are deliberately misleading the British people. You are creating a false narrative, and we're not going to tolerate it.
He says that laws need to be reviewed, reformed and changed.
They don't. The laws are there. They're absolutely fine, as has previously been set out, as I've just listed, 4 cases.
But if it is the case that the framework within which Prevent is working isn't broad enough to identify a child such as this who's obsessed with genocide, mass killings, school shootings.
How much more information do you need?
But is it not the case, as he's trying to make, that it does need reform to the Prevent protocol?
You're right, the country needs reform because we're sick and tired of this incompetence by multiple authorities across the establishment. We've just had enough of these multiple failures. We were told Prevent was going to be reformed and changed, and it wasn't. Root and branch reform of all of this stuff is required. It is totally unacceptable.
So do you welcome these new reviews, these new inquiries?
Look, it's interesting. I mean, let's have a public inquiry because we need to know hour by hour who knew what, when, and why decisions were made to withhold information from the British public. Nigel Farage was quite right to say questions need to be asked. He was quite right to say that the truth was being withheld from us, and he was completely wrongly smeared and labelled as being responsible for the appalling riots that then took place. If we'd been told the truth, I don't think those riots would have taken place to anything like that degree. Therefore, the responsibility for those riots arguably rests with the people who deliberately withheld information from the British people.
Nigel Farage, you mentioned him there, he was criticised. It comes as no surprise to me to tell you that. You are well aware of it. Do you stand by the way that your criticisms were levelled, the phraseology, the language that was used during the time?
He's just been proven right. He's literally been proven right. That we said questions need to be asked and answered, and he said, is the truth being withheld? And it turns out the truth was being withheld. The Home Secretary and the Prime Minister knew exactly what was going on. Radicabana had not been charged. We need to know when they discovered the contents of the monster's bedroom and why they made those decisions to say that it's a non-terror-related incident. The day after, and then even months later, on the 29th of October, the Chief Constable of Merseyside Police inexplicably still said it's non-terror-related.
Richard Tice, Reform MP, thank you for your time.
And there you have it, guys. I would say that the UK government, the CPS, the media, the left, just everyone that was complicit in not identifying Radicabana and him being on Prevent, that anti-terrorism watch, and no one saying anything, all parties involved failed those 3 girls, all parties. And it's disgraceful. It's so disgraceful that the UK can have information on such a monster and a thug like Radicabana and not do anything about it. He's on the watch list, in several departments, and you do nothing, and he can go out and he can go and behave like that. And then on top of that, you say that it's non-terror related and you're covering it up. This is a disgrace from this Labour government. This is probably one of the most... When this came out, I was raging. I was absolutely raging, because they had more than enough information on this guy and they chose to do nothing but to play politics and go after Nigel Farage and say, Nigel Farage, you shouldn't use language like this. Nigel Farage, this and that. They wanted to smear him. What are you worrying about a smear campaign on Nigel Farage? What's he got to do with any of this? He's asking for answers. He wants answers. So give him and the public answers. Stop covering this guy up. This Labour government, honestly speaking, when they got in, I didn't think they'll be this bad. Let's just be honest. They have been atrocious. No one is safe under this Labour government. No one is safe. Economically, you're not safe. Your kids are not safe. Politically, you're not safe. There's a two-tier system. You can't say what you want. You're not safe. Your freedom of speech isn't safe. You know, nothing and no one is safe under this Labour government. You know, and, you know, to top it all off, you know, the kids, protect the kids, man. Just protect the kids. The economy, all of that, we can, you know, we can always re-strategize with that. With the kids, you must protect them. That's the future. Can't let them just go out like that. Can you imagine that? Anyway, guys, I'll catch you at the next video. Peace.